Making characters in tabletop role-playing games is one of the most fun aspects of the hobby, and I have made so many more characters than I've ever gotten a chance to play. So today, we are going to make a character in Tales from Elsewhere, the game that I am creator and lead designer on. But before we jump into that, if you haven't liked or subscribed, please do so for this video and my channel. It really helps get the word out. We're just a small group here making this game, and we'd really like for people to engage with these videos. If you comment down below, I do tend to respond to all of them I can. I'm very engaged and love talking about this stuff. And a quick note before we jump in, the rules we're going to be looking at for character creation are currently being iterated on. They're in active development after a couple years of playtesting. So what we're going to see is rough draft, in progress, not final. Without further ado, let's make a gravedigger in Tales from Elsewhere. In Tales from Elsewhere, a character is composed of three backstory elements: their profession, what they did for a living, their culture, how they were raised and who they were raised around, and their inciting incident, which is what pushed them out into the world, or which has defined them. These three choices end up giving them their starting skills, their equipment, and knowledge, and a choice of special abilities called edges. Let's name this character Mallory Westbrook. That just sounds like a earthy gravedigger to me. For his profession, I've gone with tradesperson. So a gravedigger is somebody who'd be a laborer who digs holes for a living, really. So tradesperson fits perfectly well. Your profession gives you access to two skills. Now, these are what are called backstory skills. Over the course of character creation, you'll have between 4 and 6 of these to pick from. We'll mark them down on the sheet now and finish that step up later. You don't lock in any of these important decisions like your skills or edges until you actually finish choosing all of your backstory elements. This way you can take a look at the whole character in aggregate before locking in those vital character build options. For tradesperson, it looks like it gives access to athletics and might. Athletics is the skill that governs moving yourself, running, jumping, climbing trees, and might is a skill that's for moving other things, like people or doors. So this character is going to be very physically capable from this backstory element. Your profession gives you access to 2 edge categories, from which I'll be able to pick 1 edge at the end of this process. And looks like tradesperson gets to pick the bruiser and crafting categories. So I'll mark that down on the back of the sheet and come back to that at the end of the process when I lock in my edges. But those 2 edges give me some variety there. Bruiser is for rough and tumble melee, and crafting lets me make items and utility things during downtime. Your backstory elements also give you traits. These are role-playing cues and tie into the luck system that we will cover in a later video. They give you a few options here to pick from, but you can always make up your own. There's not direct rules tied to each of these words. They're meant to be evocative cues to the player. I like the term earnest here for this character. I think he's a no-nonsense, speak-his-mind kind of guy. So let's write that in his traits box. Your backstory elements also give you selections of knowledge. Now, these aren't knowledge skills. You don't roll anything here. You pick expert and familiar knowledge that just grants you knowledge of the world. I get to pick 1 expert and 1 familiar for tradesperson from this list, but looking at it, I don't see something specifically for gravedigging. So I'm just going to write in gravedigging as my expert skill. This is because, again, there isn't a concrete list of knowledges that you're required to select. There's a list provided in the rulebook for you to base your decision on if you want to just rely on that. But if you don't find something you like, just write something in, as long as your GM approves. So gravedigging it is for expert. For familiar, carpentry makes sense to me, as I think he'd know how to make coffins. Expert knowledge is something you could teach a class on, and familiar knowledge is something you can carry on a conversation about and generally find your way around. But you wouldn't know all the ins and outs. Your backstory elements all give you some choices of starting possessions. So let's lock in some gear for this character. Looks like I get work clothes, classic, and I get to pick 1 of the following weapons. These look like various farm tools and such, and I think we all know which one I'm going to pick here for this gravedigger. I'm going with shovel, which I'll just note down is a 2-handed bashing or slashing weapon. Uses my brawling skill, D10 injuries, and it's 3 encumbrance, so it's kind of heavy, but I think this character is going to have good carrying capacity because he's really strong. And also I get provisions, which is a downtime consumable that I can use to recover more strain when I'm resting. Dig it. We'll write that down. And I get a little bit of cash, and I get $10 in commodities. So I'll just note that down now. I can always fiddle with that later. Next, I'll pick the culture for our gravedigger. Now, I imagine that this guy used to be a preacher. Maybe he was a preacher in training. Maybe he went through a lot of it and then lost his way before becoming fully frocked or something like that. So having him be raised in the Church of Ashes community sounds really cool. The Church of Ashes is one of the many organizations in Clockworld, and they are a force of good, but they are also kind of intense. And let's mark in their information here. So the skills that this is going to grant me access to are bravado and melee. So bravado is the forceful, active form of charisma. It is leading others, it is intimidating others, it's inspiring others. So it's very forceful, and I imagine this person can get on quite a rant. Give him a soapbox, and maybe he'll start preaching and proselytizing. So bravado fits here. Melee, I don't know if I'm going to end up using. The shovel is a brawling weapon because it's not actually designed to fight with, so you mostly use it as an improvised weapon. So I may not need it, but we'll mark it down anyway. I'm going to go ahead and pick a trait really fast. I like faithful on here. This is a man of faith. Even if he has lost his way, I think he still has that fire deep inside him. So we're going to note faithful here as a trait. Looks like I get to pick just one familiar knowledge from this backstory element. So let's write that in before we flip over to the back of the page for edges. I want him to know about undead. I want to know how to fight him, how to stop him. So we'll make him familiar with the unholy, which covers undead and rituals and all sorts of macabre things. Eldritch would be more like Lovecraftian horror knowledge and madness-based magic. And then faiths would be just knowing about what people believe and the specifics there. But I think unholy fits the character best. All right, for edges, looks like I get to pick between defensive and supernatural edges. That's cool. So we'll mark that on the back of the sheet and lock that in toward the end of the process. For possessions, looks like I just pick one of a couple different consumables. We got Banishing Incense, which wards off horrors and such, and undead. Holy Water, which is a thrown weapon, and Anointing Oil for anointing weapons. So let's do Holy Water. I love Holy Water. I think it's a lot of fun. You can toss it in an undead or an horror, and it just automatically inflicts a critical injury to them. Super gnarly stuff. Very fun. We'll mark that down. All right, the last backstory element is the Inciting. And so I like the idea that this is a washed up former preacher man who now just digs graves for a living. So hit rock bottom just really works here. So this means this guy really lost his way. I think he got addicted to the hooch maybe and just really had a rough time. And that just screams Weird West to me. So let's do rock bottom. Looks like for skills for rock bottom, it's giving us access to brawling and dexterity. Brawling is using improvised weapons, fighting unarmed, generally wrestling people around, and I'll be needing that based on this build I have in mind, because I want him to fight with a shovel, or maybe like pick up a casket and hit somebody with it, pick up a tombstone, that kind of thing. So we'll definitely be using that one. For the trait for hit rock bottom, I think I know what I'm going to pick. It's right there in front of me, addicted. I think this guy needs his hooch, needs his whiskey to make it through the day. For knowledge, I get to just pick one familiar from criminals and gambling. I think criminals works here. Maybe he fell in with some bad folks, so he knows his way around the criminal world. He knows bandits and bookies and such. That just feels right to me. Your incident is more narrow when it comes to edges. It just gives you one category to pick that edge from. So I'll just write that down on the back of the sheet now. It'll be a bruiser edge, so good for rough and tumble. Lastly, for hit rock bottom here, I need to pick one possession. Looks like it's a list of drugs and other vices, and Flask of Booze is sitting right there. It's ready to be used. It's perfect. I'm just going to write that in, and the build I'm envisioning will use this Flask of Booze in combat, because not only does it remove strain, but it actually will embolden you until the end of your next turn. The rules you see on screen here are actually a little outdated, but basically what it does is it gives you a boost until the end of your next turn. All right, now that we've locked in our backstory elements, it's time to actually lock in our skill ranks. In Tales from Elsewhere, a skill can have a rank between 0 and 3 at character creation. Based on the choices I have here from these backstory skills, I will pick 1 rank 3, a master skill, 2 rank 2, an adept skill, and then I can pick any 4 skills, regardless of my backstory, to be rank 1. And these choices are permanent for the character in that they don't scale up and down as you progress. These are core aspects of the character that have taken a lifetime to learn, and it's not the kind of thing that one delve into a dungeon is going to change, though there are rules in the game to retrain things if you don't like your decision. So let's lock in some choices for this character that I think will be fun for the build. Okay, now that the ranks are chosen, we can fill in all of the data that is based on that. So the bonus for any rank is just equal to double the rank. So I can fill all that in here really easily. The math is very simple. Let's fill all that in. I can now fill in defenses, which are passive things that the enemies roll against when they're trying to frighten me or grab me or sneak by me. And these are just based on my skill ranks. In some cases, it gives me the choice of 2 skills to base that defense on, where I take the higher of the 2. So for awareness, I just use acuity. For sneakiness, it's guile or reflexes. Grit is bravado or discipline. And vigor is discipline or might. The bonuses are just the same calculation that we used before, double the rank. The difficulty, however, is 4 plus the bonus. And there is a helpful spot on the front of the character sheet that helps explain this if you ever forget that calculation. You don't need to have it memorized. You don't need to do the math in your head. If you don't want to, there's a helpful reminder there. So let's fill all that in. We can now also fill in the reactions, which, like defenses, are based on either 1 or 2 different skills, taking the higher. So with block, I can use either brawling or melee. We'll use brawling. Dodge is reflexes. Intercept, which is something you use to prevent people from running away from you, is athletics or might, and take cover is athletics or reflexes. So our intercept is going to be quite good here. We'll be able to prevent people from running away. And of course, the bonuses are simply based on the rank. You'll also note that the character sheet reminds you what you can use those reactions in reaction to. So for example, block is used to react to attacks, while dodge can only be against strikes, like things in melee. Intercept is for movement, and take cover is against blast, shots, and throws, so ranged things. My speed is going to be 30 feet. I'm not going to be picking any options that change that, so we can fill that in. All right, we can now fill in the attack section, which is just a way for you to pre-calculate your various weapons and modes of attack. So let's write in the shovel, and the shovel uses the brawling skill, and my rank in brawling is rank 2, so the bonus is plus 4. And the injury dice is 1 plus your rank. So in this case, I'll use 3 injury dice, and the shovel uses d10s, so I'll write 3d10. There are no complications based on this weapon. It doesn't do special bleeding injuries, it's not extra painful, and so forth, so I'll just write none. And I'll note that it can be used to bash or slash. And the range is melee, so it's only things that are adjacent to me. I'll also write in just my wrestling and punching skill here. This is me fighting unarmed. So this is also brawling, so my rank is 2, and my bonus is 4. And unarmed uses a d20 for its injury dice, which is pretty bad. And you can check out my video on the injury system that I released earlier if you want to kind of dig into the math on that. And there's no complications, and I'll note that this is non-lethal. It just basically means it's not particularly deadly, and you don't inflict critical injuries with it, even when you're hitting them in the head. But you can knock people out with it. The last thing I need to note is my carrying capacity. So this game does use a carrying capacity system that involves noting small amounts of numbers. It's not a very burdensome tracking, but it does make you make decisions on what you bring into the field, because you can't carry an infinite amount of things, and everything has a little bit of weight to it. So the capacity is 6 plus my vigor bonus, so my vigor bonus is 6, so my capacity is 12. And the maximum is double that, so 24. If I go over my capacity, I become encumbered, which isn't that bad. It just makes me low roll athletics and reflexes tests, so I'd be bad at taking cover and running and jumping, which may not be the end of the world, but something to consider. It's less punitive in this game than in others, where being encumbered is often a death sentence. I'll also now write that I have all of this gear equipped by writing it in the first column. This build doesn't have any stowed bags or tool belts equipped from the beginning, so I won't have any choices there, like putting things in a backpack, but that's okay. I have so much capacity that it won't really matter. Now, last and certainly not least, I'm going to lock in my edges. So for my first choice, I get to pick between Bruiser and Crafting. Crafting is super valuable, so I'm going to choose Crafting here, and I'm going to pick Sanctifier. This comes with a benefit that I can use at any time, which lets me bless a corpse to make sure it doesn't raise as undead. Perfect for a gravedigger. But it also adds items to my craft list. There will be a separate video on crafting in general, but long story short, whenever you have downtime, you can just make items from your craft list. If you have several crafting edges, you combine all those lists into one. So with this one, I get to make Anointing Oil, Bless Armor, Bless Weapon, or Holy Water. I can make one of those things every time I get some downtime, which is pretty cool. I'll be chucking holy water everywhere or blessing people's weapons and armor. That'll be a lot of fun. For my second edge, I get to pick between defensive and supernatural. And normally I'd always pick something supernatural here, but I have a really specific build in mind. So I'm going to pick the defensive edge called Borracho. This lets me expend a reaction during my turn to drink a consumable without having to use an action. And it also increases the number of drinks of alcohol I can ingest before I get sick, which is normally your vigor bonus +1. So with this, I could actually do 9 drinks of alcohol before anything starts to hit me, which is a classic alcoholic build, I suppose. So that'll be a lot of fun and really fit the character. For the third edge and last edge from my Inciting Incident, I just have to pick one from within the Bruiser category. Luckily, there's one in there that really will fit this character. It's called Zealous Fervor. While I'm emboldened, I add 2 more injury dice every time I strike with a melee weapon, and any allies close to me add 1 more injury die to all of their strikes. This is just great for a raging preacher man with a shovel that's going to charge in and start smacking stuff. And what's really cool about this setup is that when you take a swig of alcohol from my flask, I'm emboldened until the end of my next turn. So I can use the Borracho edge to burn a reaction to drink it and still have both of my actions to use while emboldened by the alcohol. So I can swig that liquid courage and go in hard. So those are the 3 edges for the character. Now, there are currently 130 edges to pick between in the rulebook. There are 10 different categories and 13 edges per category. There is an immense amount of build variety here. And after character creation, as I earn more and more of these through milestones, you actually aren't limited to these initial categories I selected. I can start branching out into anything else and take the character in interesting build directions. You're also allowed to retrain edges to pick other things. So if I'm not happy with this build, I can always switch them out later. And when you do retrain, you're also not limited to those initial edges. So you can tweak the character over time if you need to. And that looks like everything for this character. He's basically ready to go. He's a rough and tumble, super buff, former priest turned alcoholic gravedigger, which is just absolutely perfect for the world of Clockworld. That's super fun. I think this character would be a blast to play. I think he'd be decently effective too. His good might and bravado and brawling will make him kind of a versatile rough and tumble character while also being able to contribute in social situations. And his ability to intercept enemies that are trying to run by him will help him protect others. And crafting holy water and blessing armor during downtime just gives him an extra chunk of utility to provide the group. So really fun character, I think. Thanks so much for watching. It was a lot of fun. I love making these characters. And if you have character concept ideas you'd like to see made on this channel, please comment down below and upvote those that you'd like to see if somebody has a cool idea. These are really easy videos for me to make, and I can make several more if the community is interested. As always, please like and subscribe, and hope to see you again next time.